Hi everyone, Bonnie Power here. Today I'm going to be interviewing Greg Roworth, who has a massive success story. He's just sold his fifth business, and I had the good privilege of working through one of his business programs in the business that he's just sold, and we're just catching up now to see what's going on, and I also was interested to hear how he is using LinkedIn and authority type of content, and also in video marketing and other technology that's available, because I want to give you some insight into how others are using it and get some tips and ideas so that you can help grow your business through social media like LinkedIn and other strategies. So welcome, Greg.
Thanks, Bonnie.
Yeah, so just tell us a little bit about your success stories. I mean, I can't believe 5 businesses it's now that you've up and sold.
Well, that's right. Yeah, I can't hardly believe it myself. But particularly when I first started off in business, I struggled like everyone else. In fact, nearly went bankrupt after 4 years. Really, at that point was a real turning point, and I knew that I needed help. So I managed to get help and turn the business around, and actually became a success story in that business, so that people were coming to me and asking me for advice about how to run their business better. Yeah. So as a result of those sort of conversations, which I enjoyed, I decided to sell that first business, and I went to getting involved in consultancy. Started work as a consultant. But the entrepreneurial side of me took over, and I left that business and started out on my own and developed an accountancy practice and turned that to a consultancy practice, and sold those practices, which were in Adelaide, moved to New Zealand, and then set up similar businesses there and sold that. Then came back to Melbourne and did the same thing again. And over the last 6 years have built up from scratch a successful business consulting firm, and which was doing $1 million turnover in the last year, and now have sold that off as well to branch off and do some different things.
Fantastic! So, it's amazing. Yeah. Now, what's your secret? Because I know you do a lot of marketing. You really you put the effort in to build a really good brand. Tell me about some of the key strategies that you use.
Yeah, well, you mentioned content marketing and authority marketing before, and really I've got to say that those two strategies have been the turning point for me, because in the first couple of businesses, I was basically marketing them in a traditional way. They were all about the products and services that we were offering, and trying to sell those, and that was successful, but it was hard work. But really the turning point came when I wrote my first book, which was only a short booklet, about 70 pages. But the authority that immediately gave me was amazing. I remember one conversation I was trying to sell our services to an accountant, and he was very skeptical and saying, "Well, who are you?" And I gave him a copy of my book, and his attitude just like, "Oh, wow, you're an author." And the whole atmosphere in that meeting changed in an instant.
I haven't heard about that. I'm actually got my 2018 goal is to write a book.
Excellent.
I just want to see the look on people's faces that you
well, that example was just one instance, but it just shows the power of a book. And since then, I've written 2 more, but every book, just adds to the credibility and the authority that people regard me with. And as well as writing the books, there've been lots of other content. I've had dozens of articles published in various magazines and online. But over the last few years as well, with technology, the ease of producing webinars and webinar content has been another aspect to developing an authority content marketing approach. And we've been using webinars very effectively to increase that authority. So when we have
Sorry, is that a live webinar or the
We
pre-recorded?
actually did recorded webinars. I wasn't that confident to go into live webinars at that point. So I actually pre-recorded it and ran recorded webinars. So,
Interesting.
So what that did was actually, by the time it came to having a sales conversation, people were wanting to buy. There's no longer any need to convince people of that I was the right person for them. We would have conversations about how can you help me instead of what can you do for me. That sort of sceptical approach that a lot of people have in a sales conversation. Well, who are you and what can you do for me? It's not, you've already got past that. You've already got past who are you and what have you done. It's like, well, I really hope you can help me. And, so then it's much more a conversation about them and in my case, their business and how I could help them. And it was just about, discovering, are we a good fit for the programs we have to offer? My experience, that content marketing authority positioning has just changed the dynamics in the sales marketing process so much that I highly recommend it.
Very good. And I know that you were doing some LinkedIn marketing campaigns during the whole of this year. Can you tell me about the steps that you were doing, what elements were that made up of?
Yeah, well, that's true. What I discovered, I'm a fairly shy person, so going to networking meetings for me was always a struggle. And, I would go to networking because that's what you do. But, I'd find myself talking to one or two people at those meetings, and often they're not the ideal client. And, it was a lot of hard work for not much result. When I discovered LinkedIn, what I found is that I could duplicate that networking methodology, but instead of turning up and meeting random people, I could target people who are specifically in my ideal client target and set up a conversation with my ideal clients. And, without being spammy or without trying to sell my services, just to make sure that the connections were ideal for me, and then start a conversation, and it's email or, messaging backwards and forwards, just about the same sort of things you would do in a networking meeting about, who are you, what do you do, who's your ideal client, how can I help, those sort of backwards and forwards conversations to a point where if you identify then, well, potentially, there's a good fit here. We could either support each other in growing our business, or maybe you're a client. Then we take it to that next step. And the authority marketing, the content marketing process has been so valuable in that as well, because for me, it's been not about, well, let's have a coffee. It's about, well, the first thing you might like to do is read one of my books or read one of the articles or watch the webinar. And it's a much softer introduction to get to know me before you take it to that, risk of, well, maybe he's going to try and sell me something.
Like
so,
there's only so many coffees you can have in a day, and then
yes. Right. Yeah. So for me, LinkedIn has made networking much more efficient, and by the time it's right to meet someone, it's been a sales conversation rather than a potential coffee meeting to find out if you might be a client.
Not leveraged at all.
No, totally unleveraged, the old networking approach. But this is, I've found LinkedIn as a really useful tool to leverage the networking and to only end up with high quality meetings.
Absolutely. Thank you. It's just been great talking with you, Greg. So I really appreciate you sharing all these gems, and I'm looking forward to seeing what happens in your 6th business.
Yes.
Everybody watch the space. So
that's right. We're very excited. Very enthusiastic about where we're going, and know we're on a good thing. So
awesome.
I'll keep in touch.
All right. We'll see you another day. Thanks, Greg.
Pleasure. Bye.